Hello and welcome to another edition of the Decidedly Local podcast. I'm Jeremy Evans, and today the episode is simply a clip from the most recent Town of Harrietstown board meeting. It's approximately 32 minutes in length, and it is a discussion that the board had about the proposed public safety building. Supervisor Jordana Malik is on the Public Safety Committee, and she has now provided us, the town board, with two updates. This one was particularly interesting because she brought up the conceptual floor plan on the screen and went over it in some detail. And then we had a short discussion about it. So it's pretty interesting. If you're watching, you can kind of follow along as she moves around and shows different parts of the building. But even if you're just listening, I think there's some interesting things that she shares from her attendance at the most recent committee meeting. So I hope you find it interesting. We'll see you next time.
Okay. So what I want to do, if I can make this work, is kind of do like a walkthrough that what they did at the last meeting with us and go through like the different sections.
Thank you.
I'm not sorry. This is a conceptual plan. They still have to meet, like with the design people still have to meet with the various, like meet with each entity, and they have to, and then once all that's done, then it goes out to a third-party estimator. We're at like the beginning of the beginning in all of this. But so this area here is what is basically going to be open to, let me move these guys over there. That works better. Okay. So this area is like the main area that's going to be open to the public. And what I, some of these were my questions, some of these were other people's questions, but immediately off the bat, right, they have like men's and women's toilets. There's no like family restroom. There's no like single restroom. So we asked about the possibility of sort of reworking that. The nursing room doesn't have a toilet. It has a sink, so it wouldn't work that way. But I just remembered all the bathroom discussions we had when we were doing the airport. And I was like, and so they acknowledged that that is like, they'll take a look at that. That makes sense. This space here is a community room that is open to the public to the extent that like organizations could have meetings there or trainings or like this, like there'd be doors securing all the other stuff, but like the public could come in and go in here kind of thing. There would be a kitchen. They envision like more sort of the fire department hosting more community meals and things like that. So then this blue part over here, this is the police department stuff. And they have like basically the soft interview room. The way that it was described is like that initial like conversation, but the person may or may not isn't like arrested and being detained. So it's, like a soft room. An office for the police chief, an office for the patrol sergeants. And then they have holding cells, and people, like if someone is getting released, they can go here instead of going out the main entrance. So like if there's other people here, so they have like a more private way to exit. There is a toilet shower that could be used, by the people in the holding cell. And then this is like the hard interview for like when someone's in, I don't know if detention is the right word, or in like
custody,
in custody,
probably.
custody.
Yeah.
That's the word. Yeah, I was looking for. So over here you have the, this is all of their equipment. The other thing that was acknowledged is that this design hasn't been matched to the equipment that they specifically have. Like that's one of the things, like like when we get to the fire department too, it's that like we'll check that like this is the right number of cars and trailers and bicycles or personal, all the personal watercraft, or they got to double check that stuff. So coming back over here, and we go up. So conference room, record storage. So currently all of the evidence that the police have is all stored off-site. I don't know where, but like this whole area here is going to be evidence storage on site. So this all exists now, but it's off-site somewhere else. And then here you've got locker rooms and dorm rooms. The ratio of men's locker room to women's locker room this day and age, I suspect they should be more equal, but that's subject for more discussion. So I think that's pretty much all of the police stuff that they talked about. But one of the things that I noticed is that this whole section is completely separate from the rest of the building, right? There's like no integration or crossover with the police department. Okay, so then we go up. Well, let's go back.
Good, right? I mean, you don't want to have them.
Yeah, but when you talk, like, in my mind, I guess I thought that part of the reason for having the three entities together was to create like more of common shared space and more, but in this case, it doesn't. It's like you could separate the entire police department structure and it wouldn't like impact anything else. And I had thought they were going to have like more common areas, but it was just the perception in my mind, not because someone told, so it was just surprising to me that it wasn't more integrated.
Maybe it's more safe though.
But this is like the EMS area going over here. So you have, right, like the chief gets an office, the treasurer gets an office, the manager gets an office. You have a separate boardroom from the boardroom that the police department is. You have a separate entrance here. You have a kitchen for their use and storage of their equipment and their items. You have the dorm rooms for their personnel and their day room of where they can spend time. And then you go into the fire department area. So the fire department area, even though it's all one area, it's really made up of two different components, the way it was explained to me, which is like the paid fire drivers and the volunteers. So over here, you have like the training captain has an office, the assistant fire chief has an office, the fire chief has an office. This is like all secretary charge. This is all on the volunteer side. This is some courtyard that already exists in the middle of the building, a green space. And then you have a day room for the volunteers and dorms for the volunteers. Then over here is where you have the drivers, the paid drivers have their area. Then you've got the fire kitchen, toilet, shower, all those kinds of things. And then a fire meeting training space that's different than the public meeting space. The decon area, we spent a bunch of time talking about that. So the idea is that both the EMS equipment and the fire equipment comes into the decon unit, that you have a separate toilets and showers through the decon unit, and then you're able to exit the decon unit not circle back, right? So, because if this area is the contaminated area, you don't want to like walk back through it to go, so that you can come in, laundry, lockers, all that kind of stuff, everything can get cleaned. And that's before you enter into any of the dorm areas, any of the birthing areas, right? So all of the contaminant stays within that place. The gear lockers are right here, so it's clean, you know, ready to go. You have then the paid drivers have their like dispatch room, a hose tower, their day room separate from the volunteer day room, and then the ambulance. But again, they reiterated they need to like verify the equipment, because like some of these have specific names to them, but some of them don't. And there is concern about trucks, so they need to
add somebody to somebody is waiting to be added.
So they need to verify this information in terms of like, is this the right amount of stuff? Because it was unclear. Brandon was on the meeting and and then there was like back and forth, and they were like, okay, we need to get offline and double check all this. So like the equipment verification part is like subject to ongoing discussion or verification. Let's see.
It was like a super first draft, right? So
Yeah, so this is what's called a conceptual plan. It's
Mhm.
not, that's how it's being referred to.
Mhm.
There needs to be, okay, so then this is like this part here overlays this part here.
Oh,
Ah,
okay.
And so there's gonna be like a hose tower and a training tower where you can do stuff. And then there'll be a mezzanine and then a bunch of mechanical stuff that'll be on top, overlaid top of it. Especially like above the decon stuff.
Yeah, you need
There's
filters and air, yeah.
Yeah.
lots of mechanicals. Someone will explain more. I asked the question, having lived in multiple barracks, how are they going to make sure people can flush the toilet and the showers? No, because I've
I
lived
know.
in barracks. When you go to flush the toilet, you have to notify them, because if you don't, it's so hot, you'll literally like cause burns to your body. And we got into a discussion about it, and they explained that is a thing in older buildings. Everyone knew exactly what I was talking about when I brought it up, but they said that now the engineer and the technology, you run separate, like the toilet system and the shower system are separate. So people flushing toilets won't impact people in the shower. Sounds like a little thing.
Dylan burns sound like a big thing. So.
Yeah, it's the thing. So it's not like the old World War II barracks at Fort Drum. What I'm trying to, so that was kind of the overview that we were provided with everything, with the understanding that it's a conceptual plan. And the other thing, let me shrink it down. Okay. So if this building is, picture this is Petrova Avenue over here. Over here, and there's another site plan that I didn't pull up, but over here there's a bunch of wetlands. So the ability to drive around the building is not possible. Basically, there's going to be an entrance, like the police are going to enter and exit off of Petrova, but then the fire and rescue, they called a road Bay Bridge Road, which
Bay Boulevard.
Bay
Yeah.
Boulevard,
Mhm.
right? And then it goes to Edgewood,
Yep.
and then Edgewood to Route 3, like up over here.
Mhm.
And we talked about there would needing to be some kind of safety light onto Edgewood and then also onto Route 3. The Route 3 because of the cars, but the concern about Edgewood is a lot of people on bicycles use that as a cutoff for Route 3 coming from that
Mhm.
neighborhood across.
Mhm.
And obviously, you know, a fire truck pulling out and
Mhm.
kids coming down on bicycles, maybe not paying the best attention, isn't a good. So there was a discussion how there needs to be some kind of I don't know, it's not a stop
No,
sign,
no.
a light, so there'll be something that will navigate that with the long-term plan to develop more of a route that goes from here, like all the way out directly to Route 3, if you could picture like Route 3 up across the top.
Mhm.
But that is like
That's-
a later phase in the project because there's concerns about wetlands, there's concerns about other stuff.
Yeah.
So in terms of if like building the buildings phase 1, getting that road would be like a phase 2 or potentially a phase 3. So that was also discussed. We are now meeting weekly instead of bi-weekly to just keep things on track, but there's different, like they're using the time. So like this week, it's just the fire department and the engineers, not all of us. And then like next week, so,
That's nice.
but it is
That's the way to
happening
do it.
on a weekly basis. So that, and then we talked a lot about this thing on November 13th, but I'll have to get more information about that. I don't know. Cause that came up too. And like Wendell, the people were gonna be there and stuff, so. But that is my current update. I think it's really, you need a big piece of paper. You can't see
No.
on this. It's like, that's why you like zoom in. That's the only way I can see stuff.
Mhm.
Where is the current existing Pius building?
From what I understand, I'm just like, my understanding is that it's like along here,
Okay.
that that is the area that it covers.
And then that exercise room in the purple community space, that's open to the public?
They didn't state that it was open to the public, but that it could be used by all of the entities. And they created a storage room because it was also like a training room, I guess, if like you're training in combatives or like other physical exercises. So there was like a place to store equipment or mats or something that was discussed.
See,
But it wasn't, yeah, it was very vague. And the discussion of like the community room and the kitchen, the idea was like there'd be more community meals and fundraisers but there wasn't really a super clear plan on that. But just that this area, when they talked about it, the training room would be something where the community, and if you come down, right? So like the public can enter and go in here and not impact anything else that's going on in the rest of the building.
And it depends on.
I would say
How
that this
things,
building
like-
is their wish
Like,
list. Yeah.
But they still have to fill it. That's because it's an existing building, which they still have to fill with something. Right? So even if it's a wish list, it's not like you would go and say, well, we don't need this, that, and the other thing. We could take those out, but then you're left with, you still have space in the building. That's what I've been kind of confused about. One of the things.
Well, I don't, because my understanding is all this is being added on.
All that's being added.
Base.
I'm talking about the existing building.
Right, but like I feel like if you, right, I'm
Oh,
neither an
if
architect
you
or
could-
nor an engineer, but I
If
feel like
you say
this
from
stuff.
that line
Some-
down.
Yeah, my understanding is that the building ends somewhere about like,
And through there.
Yeah.
yeah, so. But this is currently where you're at. Like I said, you now know as much as I do.
Well, another great update,
I know.
but could I ask a couple questions? You may not know the answer, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can ask, but I'm
you're
not
our liaison.
sure.
You talked about it, you referenced it, and I think that's kind of a common sense understanding a lot of people had, which is that by consolidating the three agencies in one place, there would be some efficiencies that would come, right? Like the idea that there would be like one conference room that everybody would share. That makes sense. That makes sense to anybody. But this doesn't, it just didn't really at this point.
No, there are 3
like-
conference rooms in this version, yeah.
And so it kind of begs the question, then what was the purpose of putting them all together, especially like in the case of the police department, as you pointed out, they're completely, I mean, it's the same building, but they're otherwise walled off completely. And I'm guessing part of it is because of security
Right.
and confidentiality, which also makes sense. But then what's the point of them being there if they're completely separate and they're not sharing anything that might lead to potential savings? Because I guess because you said it, and I think most people would have agreed with the concept. Yeah, put them all together, share this, share that, makes sense. But this doesn't seem to have a lot of that going on.
And one point you made is that you've got the existing building, you've got to fill it.
Yeah,
And so we just pointed out that all the bays are to be built on, which makes sense because you
Yeah.
have to have a certain
Yeah.
amount of elevation
and
and
the
clearance.
building there is not going to house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do see what you're saying as far as, a shared common space. Realistically, it also does make sense to me that you would almost barricade off the police,
From everybody else.
Yeah.
everybody else.
Well, and I also think if you look at what we experienced with the airport, right? Like this is go back 2 years in our
A
airport
lot of cuts
process,
to be
like,
made.
and we had
Mhm.
that meeting and it's like, oh, we want the fireplace and we want
Yeah.
this and we want that. Like that's the phase that this project's in.
Yeah.
And I asked, so far we've had 2 meetings and in both meetings I have said, when does it go to that third party estimator? Because I think that is such a critical component of the decision making process.
Yeah.
And this
Even
hasn't,
the critical.
well, but
part
they,
of that, like,
and I get what they're
Yeah, I
saying,
know.
they don't have a plan to take to the third party, like, this plan is not finalized enough in their minds to even bring it to them. They need to verify that all did this different stuff, so that's the phase they're in now, is taking it from that like conceptual idea to, okay, this is what we want, and now how much is it gonna cost?
You made mention of like them having to basically confirm the inventory of vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
which seems like it would be relatively simple. But if there were fewer vehicles, I can't imagine that the footprint would become any smaller.
No, but I will say, like, my concern is if every one of these spaces is already filled and we like think about how equipment changes
Mhm.
and technology changes, like they just got a piece of equipment a couple years ago to be at the rail trail, to be able to do things
Oh,
along the
did
rail
you-
trail, right? So if this building was built 10 years ago, there'd be no room for that piece of new equipment that they just got for the rail trail. Like what other piece of potential new equipment is coming in the next 10 years that they don't know about, that it would make sense? Like in my mind, there should be an empty bay
Yeah.
in this design, because if you're truly creating a building that's going to last for the next 100 years, we don't know what that looks
That
like,
makes a lot of sense.
right? So that was kind of how the conversation started.
Maybe this is wish list. It's like, because I don't know anything about the inventory of vehicles, but this is a lot of vehicles. I mean, maybe not so much on the police side of
Not
things.
so much
That
on
looks
the police, yeah.
pretty
But,
pretty
yeah.
accurate.
But they have
it's
because I
also-
guess, but some stuff for the fire department is stored like off site or in the garage, like behind it now.
Yeah, that big.
Yeah, they have that big
tent
thing.
Yeah,
there.
and that's where like the ATV and their
covered.
hovercraft, but then like the dive boat is stored off site, like all that kind of. So the idea is that this would bring all of that on site.
Another question that at some point they had, I don't remember when this was, but at some point the village board, every single one of them had said if we can't go out to Route 3, we wouldn't do it because of concerns about impacting the neighborhood along Petrova. Like if you had a lot of coming and going on Petrova Avenue. Now it sounds like the way it's designed, the only it would just be like the public and the police department would do that, and that all of the rescue squad and fire would go out Bay Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to me like if
State Boulevard the one that goes past the treatment center right now?
The
It
citizens
says-
advocates,
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't even
Yes.
realize resort, I was like, you're driving through the
Yep.
parking lot, and they said, no, there's the
Yeah.
parking lot, and then there's.
That's the
road.
way I go when
Mhm.
I go to the hot house.
And then it dead ends at Haddon's. Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
It just seems a little strange that they just wouldn't tackle the access to Route 3 question up front because it is could have such a big impact, positive or negative, on the neighborhood. And you know how these things go, you kind of do that, the whole thing costs all the money it costs, and then all of a sudden it's like no one's got the appetite or the budget to do
I mean,
phase 2 and push it out to the road.
Makes
So
much
some
more sense to
wondering-
connect directly to Route 3.
wondering why it's being pushed off rather than just go for
I
it.
wasn't provide, or
No,
weren't
yeah.
provide any backgrounds, but I can say that on the map, there is kind of like a shadow road, like there's a dotted line that goes, so I know it's been in the discussion, I don't know what
It's
the
probably because of
factors
the
were.
wet.
But I think
That's
it's about the wetlands.
It is. Because that is through there, yeah.
About getting, and the thing is that the APA, I don't want to misspeak. I think there's some concerns about the approval process of moving through the wetlands. That's my understanding based on the information I have now, but I can ask more questions about that
Sure,
tomorrow morning at
Oh.
8 a.m.
there would be, there's ways to mitigate wetlands.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you ask the community, which they've chosen not to do thus far, I think people would say, would you, like, if given the choice, would you rather maybe affect a small amount of wetlands between a parking lot and a state highway, or affect a neighborhood,
And not
people
only
in a
that,
neighborhood? And
response
most-
time.
Right,
because
and response time. And I think
response time.
most people would say, you know what's more important to us? Response time and preserving the neighborhood rather than, you know, a few
Yeah,
square feet of,
I think a response time, because going down
Wetlands.
Bay, then stop,
Yeah.
then copy, then coming back out, then you're on Edgewood, and then you're coming out to
Yeah.
the main. That's a lot of,
Yep.
you know, slow, stop, you know.
And I know
because
that's not
of
how,
the direct.
I know that's not necessarily how the APA reviews a wetlands
Mhm.
permit, but still, like, that's kind of that would be I think if you were to ask the community, most people would say,
Yeah,
do whatever you gotta do to get it
out,
out to
yeah.
Route 3, because we just don't wanna,
Yeah,
that's
because
the
the-
way to best preserve the neighborhood around there.
Yeah, because originally, they had the spot, but to contaminate it by Upstate Auto, because that's why that was all cleared a long time ago. They were gonna put it there, but I guess there's contaminated soil or.
Is that where the storage is now?
No, there's nothing there. It's behind where Gary Manning lives. So it's between Gary
Right.
Manning's house and Upstate Auto. That was all clear because they had purchased, they were going to put it there years ago, but there's, I guess, contaminated soil, which is why they couldn't put it there.
My last question, and just again, this is great. Thank you. One of the things that the town had to do, you guys had largely done it by the time I was on the board, was you guys had established a budget for the airport terminal and had a really good sense of how you were going to pay for it. And to date, and very like just religiously trying to adhere to that budget. And all sorts of things have had to be hard decisions have had to be made to keep to that budget. And do they have a budget for this that they're trying to hit? Have they talked about that? Because
No,
that
we've been
sometimes
in the
that's what
discussion with
dictates
the
what you end up with
budget.
is, here's our budget. This is what we know we can afford. And now we've got to make tough choices.
So, no. But I also think this this conceptual design is probably 2 or 3 years old now. There was an estimate then that it was a $30 million project, I believe. Like from talking to Steve, our architect at the airport, like he has emphasized to me, like, and architects design buildings, engineers make sure they work.
Yep.
Neither one of those people tell you how much are trained or schooled and
The
how much it
builder
costs.
is the one who's going to tell
So
you.
whatever estimate, you know, and that's why
Mhm.
he says he was surprised to hear that an architect or an engineering firm would even have given a number. because I've asked him a couple of times just for feedback on this. In the process and just better understanding about things, and that's why, like I said, the only way I know how to like combat that is like the third party estimator.
Yes.
That it has to go to the third party estimator. And like I said, we've had 2 meetings. I brought it up both times. That's all I can keep doing. I actually had lunch today with Davina. We talked about it. She's definitely with me in the third party estimator. She knew exactly.
Yeah.
She was like, absolutely. He's like, that is not a $30 million building.
Nope.
In 2026, that's not a $30
No,
million.
it's not.
Maybe
I-
it was
no,
in 2022. I don't know. But there's no way that's a $30 million building in 2026, in my opinion. Based on my
It's
very-
not.
Does
it's
the
not.
fact that it's some of its existing structure
No,
make it more or less affordable?
that depends, because I can guarantee that other building is a 70s building. There is asbestos in that building.
So there's that, and there's the other thing they talked about is public safety buildings have to be like, there's risk 1 through 4 on
Mhm.
buildings, and public safety has to be,
Probably.
I'm gonna get it. I don't know if like 4 is the highest or 1 is the highest, but like a public safety building has to be at a certain level. There was some question as to whether or not the old, like the original part of the building
Meets the,
needs to be at that same risk level, or if that, because it's not like the roof that's over the fire trucks has to have a certain
Fire
thing,
barrier.
yeah, I'm sure.
but like the roof over the community room doesn't need to have that same level. So there, I guess an outstanding question had sort of been if they would need that, and the answer was that they don't, like that the
You've
that
got
the
different
entire
risk
building,
levels
yes,
at
different parts of the building, yeah,
that
and it
it's
was
used for.
and it was
Mm.
confirmed that like that's okay.
We can look at that building at its age and the windows, everything, they have got to go. They're not energy efficient. They're not. So when we're looking at that building, we are going to be looking at basically just a shell.
Mhm.
That's all that's
Got
going to
it.
be left of it. That's it.
But it's a block building, isn't it?
Yeah, but you don't know what those blocks look like. You don't know if there's cracks anywhere. I mean, there's so many unknowns to when you get down because of where it is too, because it was built originally in a wet area. You've got a lot of potential for, yeah, foundation issues, you know, when it was built in the 70s, which no offense, but there's a time frame for building. Like everybody knows the 40s and the 50s were like good sound building times. Believe it or not, the 70s and part of the 80s wasn't so great for building. It was kind of put it up, throw it up, and get up. That's why you see some houses that were built in the 70s that are kind of like
That one balloon.
falling apart. Yeah, no, that was more like when they were trying to get them up fast, like they did that in Gloversville a lot, just to get those buildings up. But the building just wasn't like, the codes weren't
Mhm.
enforced. It was more of craftsmanship before that, but the 70s in particular were a time frame where people just put it up, you know, yeah, put it up quickly. So not as much, thought and detail, went into a structure. And you look at that structure, you just know, just the windows and everything else, it's gonna be gutted. And my thought is, again, you don't know what the walls are. You don't know what you've got till you start.
I
Yeah,
think we're a
over.
really
Yeah,
long time away
Yeah.
from anybody actually building
yeah,
anything.
That was
Great.
my,
yes.
I mean,
I'm
Thank you so much.
glad you found it helpful. and
Yes.
I hope to provide you with it.
Yes, you will.
All right. Anything else on this before we move on? Okay,